My name's Will Ramsay, and I received a grant from the Snowdon Trust back in 2009 to help me get back on my feet, so to speak, and to get back to studying at university after a fairly hectic couple of months. The previous autumn, I had started at the University of Bath to study mechanical engineering, and I loved it. I'd made good friends with my flat of 24 first years, and I had a good friend that I'd made during my year out before university, lived on the floor underneath. Together we made the most of what university had to offer, taking up sports. For me, that was lacrosse, exploring the labyrinth of the city of Bath, sharing cooking tips, some of which were more experimental than others. And around these social commitments, I was usually able to fit in the academic ones too. There were many, aside from the lectures on the finer points of the Rankine cycle and imperious warnings that all roads lead to differential equations. I've since learnt that they actually do. We had a busy programme of laboratory and workshop assignments. These included building and breaking down a lawnmower engine, analysing the flow of the air in a jet, and building bridge structures before testing them to destruction. And we usually worked in groups through these exercises before writing up the individual reports later. Now, engineers aren't known for being the most sociable of creatures, so in a year of close to 200, it was in these sessions where you'd actually get to meet your course mates, people who have become vital support during the more difficult parts of the course, such as the exams that were our first set of exams in January. It was on the other side of these exams, in the second week of the semester, the first week of the second semester I should say, when I was involved in an accident, the story of which is gripping, full of drama, and more importantly, to be saved for another day. The result of it, however, was a spinal cord injury that led me to a residential stay at the National Spinal Injury Centre at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. And I should take a moment here to record my thanks to the staff of both the Royal United Hospital in Bath, as well as those at Stoke, without whom I wouldn't be here today. Not to mention the support of my friends and family. Their kindness and generosity cannot be put into words. 4 months later though, I was out. I had to register as homeless with my local authority, but I was fortunate in them finding me a bed set for the summer, not too far from my parents' home, which at the time was not accessible. But I was back at work, despite saying that I could take the summer off. National Grid, my employer for the year out before university, had agreed to let me do my 8-week summer placement, building up from 1 day a week to a full week by the end of the summer to help get my eye back into real life again. And before too long I was back at university. In year 1 again, though in a different halls of residence, and this time with a relatively small flat of only 14 others. And having passed the first semester the first time round, this time I was purely a man of leisure, no lectures to attend to, whatever. I could usually be found playing basketball, rowing a boat, or driving between these activities in Bath, Aylesbury and Slough. It was also during this time when I first got in touch with the Snowdon Trust. I had realised that I was going to struggle to participate in one of the elements of the degree course that I really enjoyed. In fact, it was one of the reasons why I preferred Bath over many of the other universities. Not all institutions value, to the same extent, the benefits of budding engineers getting their hands out from underneath textbooks and into the labs and workshops. But it's pretty unreasonable for the university to adapt these areas, which include a huge array of machines from classic lathes and pillar drills to the latest and greatest computer-controlled multi-axis milling machines. The obvious solution, therefore, was to make me more mobile within them. Together with a contribution for the benevolent fund of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, the Snowdon Trust helped me fund a standing wheelchair. It supports me in a standing position so that I can use the tools just like all my student colleagues. I don't have it here with me here today because while it's fantastic in the labs and the workshops, it's not very easy to get on and off buses to get here. As you might expect, being a very specialised piece of kit, and bearing in mind all of the other demands on the finances of me and my family at the time, it wasn't something that I was otherwise going to be able to afford. It arrived in time for the start of my second attempt at the second semester, and as well as now being able to rescue my saucepans from on top of the fridge, thanks to my hilarious housemates, I was able to make the most of every single lab session. And as before, the benefits were social as well as academic. This was an entirely new year group, and I hadn't met anyone from the course between October and February. And some of these lab partners became friends who carried me, sometimes literally, throughout the rest of my 5-year course. Perhaps more seriously though, at no time during the course was my aspiration limited by my disability. Winding forwards a bit, 5 years later, in the summer of 2014, I graduated inside the beautiful Bath Abbey and was handed my degree certificate by His Royal Highness Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex. As for everyone else there, it was a very special day for me and my family, but we had an extra special reason to be thankful to have reached this particular milestone, one that at one time had seemed quite distant. After a celebratory solo trip around Canada and America, I started National Grid's graduate scheme in the autumn. This is one of the schemes where we get to rotate between different teams around the company and around the country to gain some varied experiences. For me, part of this scheme involved a 6-month placement to broaden my horizons outside engineering in the Parliamentary Affairs team. So last July I bumped into the Noble Baroness just outside the Lord's Chamber while I waited to sit in on a debate on the energy bill. She very kindly checked that I was being treated well and would check back in a few minutes later to see whether I'd got past the doorman, which I did. I currently work in the National Electricity Control Centre with a fantastic team who make sure that these lights are going to stay on now and the next few years. Over the past few months, I've been updating the way that we schedule the right amount of extra power stations so that should something break at one of them, which it does from time to time, you won't even notice because the spare stuff will be there. In 2 weeks' time, I'll complete that scheme and take up a permanent position up in the Midlands who do a similar job, but we look slightly further into the future. We'll be doing our best to make sure the lights stay on until at least 2030 and perhaps a while longer. In fact, this latest move will present me with some new opportunities to make the most of the standing wheelchair that I got through the Snowdon Trust. After about 6 years of living in halls of residence with new first years every year, and 18 months of a relatively nomadic existence while on the graduate scheme, I'm halfway through getting a place of my own in the fair city of Coventry. And like me 7 years ago, it needs a bit of tender loving care. I'm looking forward to getting the paintbrush wet and being able to paint the ceilings instead of just the skirting boards. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to the Snowdon Trust and Lord Snowdon, who I understand is an honorary graduate of the University of Bath, for the support that has truly raised my abilities and maybe one day will allow me to reach great heights. Thank you.